pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty.
It's so important to make someone happy. Make just one someone happy. Make just one heart-to-heart you. You sing to one smile that cheers you. One face that lights when it nears you. One girl, you're everything to fame. If you win it, comes and goes in a minute. Where's the real stuff in life to cling to? Love is the answer. Someone to love is the answer. Once you found her, build your world around her. Make someone happy. Make just one someone happy, and you will be happy too. It's so important to make someone happy. Make just one someone happy. Make just one heart-to-heart you. You sing to one smile that cheers you. One face that lights when it nears you. One girl, you're everything to fame. If you win it, comes and goes in a minute. Where's the real stuff in life to cling to? Love is the answer. Someone to love is the answer. Once you found her, build your world around her. Make someone happy. Make just one someone happy, and you will be happy too.
Hired April, shot down in May. But I know I'm gonna change that tune. When I'm back on top in June. Yes, that's life. That's life. And I can't deny it. Some people get their kicks stomping on a dream. But I won't let it get me down. 'cause this final world, it keeps turning around. I've been a puppet, a pauper, a pirate, a poet, a pawn and a king. I've been up and down and over and out, but I know one thing. Each time I find myself flat on my face, I pick myself up and get back in the race. That's life. That's life. And I can't deny it. I thought of quitting, but my heart just ain't gonna buy it. And if I don't think it's worth one single try, I'll jump right on a big bird and then I'll fly. I've been a puppet, a pauper, a poet, a pawn and a king. I've been up and down and over and out, but I know one thing. Each time I find myself laying flat on my face, I pick myself up and get back in the race. That's life. That's life. And I can't deny it. I thought of cutting out, but my heart wouldn't buy it. But if there's nothing coming down this here July, I'm gonna roll myself up in a big ball and die. My.
John McDermott, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls, and friends of the Bitove family, welcome one and all to a great celebration of life. My name is Rod Black, sports announcer, friend of the Bitoves, president of the John Bitove fan club, for sure. We're going to have a celebration of life today. I got to know Senior, as I called him, for the last few years, and he used to always bug me because I'm of Ukrainian heritage. My last name actually is Chorny, which in Ukrainian means black, and he used to always call me Charney. Charney. And I can tell you his spirit is all over this room, is certainly through our lives and through our hearts. And he would be saying to me, Charney, keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it on time, and keep it light. I love the man, as we all did. John Louis Nicholas Bitove, JB, Johnny Boy, Lazo Beam, Johnny Lazo, Big Boy, Big Boss, Bobo, Pop, Bob Perry, son, brother, husband, father, grandfather, great Macedonian, great Canadian. You can applaud that. And by the way, he'd also say, Charney, they can applaud here, you know that. So applaud at will, because there's a lot to applaud the life of John Bitove. I do also know that he was a man who lived life larger than life, and when you met him, he had a firm handshake, and he always gave you a nice big hug. So it would only be appropriate, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls, if you all rose right now and looked the person next to you and gave them a handshake and give them a big hug. Give them a big JB hug. Okay, that's enough hugging. You can sit down now. Now, he'd also probably say, you know what, I know it's the world of selfies. If everybody has a cell phone, take out your phone. Take it out. No selfies. I hate selfies. Just turn your phone off. How's that? How's that? Because we got a lot of entertainment. We don't want that ringy-dingy thing going on. He'd say, Charney, make sure their phone's off. So there you go. I said I'm a sports announcer, and I'm here to keep you on time today and kind of weave you through the life of John Bitove. But I'm also a guy who is living by numbers. I've lived by numbers my entire life. So I was chatting with my great friend, Jordan, who I had a chance to meet the entire Bitove family by meeting Jordan a few years ago, earlier today. And I thought it would be only appropriate because as much as I knew JB and I knew the family and they're such a great family, I'm really a numbers guy and I'm a sports guy. So I thought I'd start the proceedings off by giving you JB, Johnny Boy, Big Boy, Senior, by the numbers. 87 years, 31,990 days, 46,065,630 minutes, 2,763,938,911 seconds, 5 Java shops, 10 Roy Rogers, 53 big boys, 65 years of marriage, 5 wonderful children, 16 wonderful grandchildren, 35,863 times that JB spoiled his grandkids. 178,542 miles driving back and forth from Fort Wayne, Indiana. That's 286,463 kilometers. All of those over the speed limit. That's how the relationship with the police department began. 9.84 seconds. That's what Donovan Bailey ran that night in Atlanta to win a gold medal, and JB always said, he's the greatest athlete I ever saw. Donovan, you here? He's here. He's usually late. He was the fastest man, but he'll be here. 396 goals scored by Paul Coffey, who he said was the best defenseman I ever saw. Coff, I'm sure you're here. He loved you. 1967, last time the Leafs won the Stanley Cup. 860 rounds of golf, 62,477 lost golf balls. 4 false teeth from getting hit in the mouth by a golf ball on his own shot. 1 hole-in-one at the age of 78. 9,200 times he sang Danny Boy, 4,014 cups of Turkish coffee, 8,210 Crown Royals on the rocks, 22,010 Du Mauriers before he quit. 1,500 plates of mac and cheese, 16 clubhouse sandwiches from the Claridge's Hotel in London, England, at 50 pounds each. That was the money. 4.2, his cholesterol rate after that. Then there are the numbers that don't add up, and add up off the charts. Millions of dollars he helped raise to those in need. Millions of lives touched. Millions of laughs that JB generated. Millions of tears that we've generated from his loss. But alas, the most significant numbers of all, the ones that count the most, 1,928, the day he was born. 2015, the day he left us. 87 magical years, all looking out for number 1. That's the real number, 1. 1 enormous heart, 1 true love, his beautiful wife, 1 beautiful family, 1 amazing life, and 1 incredible man, John Bitove. So many people would want to say so many things. We'd probably have to have this in Rogers Center, which was the Sky Dome, which JB also helped form way back when. He's touched so many people and so many things in this city, in this country, and in Macedonia. But to speak for the family, please welcome his son, a great man himself, Tom Bitov.
That's just not fair, having to follow Rod Black. Well, I can pretty much do away with 3/4 of my speech because all the stats that Rod had, he stole from me. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, honorable former premiers. Welcome, Mayor Tory. Welcome, Chief of Police and Deputy Chiefs, both past and present. Our Commander Nicodeme, Father Trico, and all the friends and family that are here today. It's such an honor to stand here before you and talk about my dad. My dad always said that you can't take material possessions with you when you depart this world. Well, his thinking was that all you could leave behind was legacy, the impact you have on other people. Today we're going to talk a little bit about that legacy. Looking back at Dad's life, two of his most endearing, of his many, but most endearing qualities were the first being that he loved to dream big, and the second was that he loved to turn those dreams into reality. These qualities were characterized in life and very evident in his early years growing up in the East End of Toronto. Dad grew up at Queen Street East and Cody Avenue. Queen and Cody was a rough and tumble neighborhood back in those days, especially for children of immigrant families. He was a son of Macedonian immigrants, Dido Kolo and Baba Vana. And Dido Kolo was so proud to be a Canadian that every day, yes, literally every day, Dido Kolo would get down on his knees and kiss the ground and thank God for delivering him to Canada. He had seen so much suffering in the old country that he couldn't believe how great this country was to live in. Nevertheless, immigrants back in the early 1930s weren't well regarded in the city. So even though he was appreciative to be, my dad was appreciative to be Canadian, he saw these injustices, and it galvanized one of his greatest traits at a very early age, fighting for those subjected to unfair treatment and prejudices. So after seeing immigrant boys and girls of all nationalities bullied in the neighborhood, he created his first organization, a gang, the Cody Gang, and they won their neighborhood back. This then evolved into his sporting accomplishments. When he was young, my father saw that his friends of immigrant backgrounds weren't getting a fair shot at making the local hockey teams. So he took the challenge upon himself, as he always did, and organized a new team comprised of the ethnic boys and some local boys. He called them the Young Leafs. He even persuaded Maple Leaf Gardens to let them play some of their home games on Maple Leaf Gardens ice, all at 13 years old. The Young Leafs went on to win 2 Ontario championships, and along the way defeated those teams that denied them a chance to play. A few of the boys from that team ended up playing in the NHL. Not bad for a bunch of Queen Street East misfits. My father always took great pride in his early athletic accomplishments. A little-known fact about Dad was how great he was as a multi-sport athlete. Though it was a little-known fact to most of you, you can rest assured that Dad never missed the opportunity to show off his huge collection of medals and trophies to us, and then tell us how ours paled in comparison to his. But hockey was his favorite sport. In fact, he was invited to try out for the Detroit Red Wings in 1946, the same year as Gordie Howe. Unfortunately, Dad decided not to go as his family needed his support. Years later, Dad and Gordie had a business meeting, and they waxed on about how different their lives would have been if they had met in 1946, and who knows what would have happened. Maybe Dad would have scored 800 goals. I'm more of the opinion Dad would have had 800 penalty minutes, but that's another thing. But as I said, the reason my father skipped a tryout was because the same reason he made so many of his sacrifices was to help support his loved ones. He even left school at grade 9 to help his family. However, this turned out to be the single greatest regret he ever had. So he did everything in his power to make sure that all of his children and his grandchildren got full educations. Dad believed in the value of education so much that the law library at Western University carries him and my mom's name. When he was 18, that all took place before he was 17. When he was 18, fate would change Dad's course completely for the better. In 1946, he attended the annual Macedonian Convention in Indianapolis. Little did he know that there he would meet the love of his life, our mom, Daza. Dad was so smitten that, as Rod referred to, he would travel 1,000 miles in a round trip every second week to visit Mom in Fort Wayne, Indiana. usually without his parents' knowledge or approval. You see, marriages in our community back in those days were all arranged. But Dad was a big dreamer, remember that. And Dad was convinced that he was going to marry for love. So in 1949, Dad married Mom, and they were brought together by love. Tomorrow would be their 66th anniversary. God bless you, Mom. Upon marrying Mom, Dad quickly did the math and figured out that a tiny butcher shop on Queen Street East could not support 8 adults. So at the ripe old age of 21, he set out on his own endeavor and opened his first restaurant, a 14-stool diner called the Java Shop on Avenue Road. He was the dishwasher, the back of the house support, the day cook, and the night cook. While Mom and Dad's sister Milka, who Dad absolutely adored, took turns being the waitress. It was hard work, but Dad always did whatever he had to do to make it a success, the way he would do and teach us for the rest of his life. He grew the Java Shops into a 5-store chain through the 1950s, and during those years at the Java Shop, an amazing story took place. I learned about this many years later, just by fate, when we were running the airport food services. One of our managers one day came to me and gave me a business card and said, on the card was written, "Thank John Bitto for the suit." As I walked away, the manager yelled out, "Oh yeah, he said something about your dad might remember him as Chucky." So I really didn't know what this meant, and I gave the card to my dad a few days later, and he looked at it, and it just didn't ring a bell. But then I remembered to mention, "Oh yeah, Dad, the manager said you might remember him as Chucky." Well, immediately Dad's face lit up. "Chucky, are you serious? Chucky was here?" It turns out that Chuck was an old guy, was a young guy that used to work at the Java Shop at Yonge and Bloor. He had arrived from Canada just at that time and couldn't speak a word of English, but my dad hired him anyway. After a year and a half of working for Dad, Chuck asked for a day off, which was totally unusual because Chuck enjoyed going to work and he didn't have anything else to do, so he was always at work. So Chuck asked for the day off, and my father agreed to accommodate the request, but was surprised, and Dad said, "Why do you need the time off?" And Chuck answered, "I'm getting married at City Hall tomorrow." And Dad was thrilled and asked him what he planned to wear. And he said, "The clothes I'm wearing, I just can't afford anything else." So Dad said, "Well, that just won't do." Next door to Dad's was a very famous men's clothing store called Ed Provans, and Dad had a pretty good fondness for fine clothes back in those days, so he had a suit ready to pick up. So he took Chuck next door to Ed Provans and said to Ed, "Fit him into that suit, he's getting married tomorrow." So Chuck got married, and 35 years later, as a proud owner of 5 restaurants out in Edmonton, he was still saying thanks to my dad. Talk about a legacy. But for as much as Dad took pride in his work, the most important thing in his life was always his family. Of course, there were nights when Dad's work kept him from having dinner at home, pretty much every night. But he always called to make sure that we understood how much he wanted to be there with us. His hard work was itself an expression of his love for us. He put food on people's plates so he could put food on our plates. And no matter how busy he was, Dad always found time to support us when we needed it. Even on the coldest, snowiest day, back in the days when we were playing high school football, we'd be out on the field, and we'd look across the field, and be one sole person standing there, and it'd be Dad cheering us on. Not to sound maudlin, but truly everything Mom and Dad did for us was for us as a family. Our country home is a great example of this, because they built it for the family, in the literal sense, right down to the design. While my siblings and I each had our own rooms, all the nieces and nephews shared dorms to maximize their time together. Dad's thinking was that at the cottage, the grandchildren aren't your children or my children, they're our children. And it worked, because if you ask any of the grandkids who their best friends are in the world, the names on the list would be dominated by cousins. And there's nothing like Christmas in Collingwood. Mom and Dad always made it a special occasion and a magical experience for the grandkids. 27 stockings on the mantle, 20-foot tree decorated by the kids, and of course Santa, who is still a secret, making a videotape visit to each kid's bed as they slept for us to watch and laugh at in the morning. The summers were pretty magical too. I'll never forget the image of Mom and Dad on the Bayside deck, watching their tribe play every game imaginable for hours on end. We all have those powerful memories of being together thanks to Mom and Dad. In addition to the belief in the strength of family, our father and mother also instilled us the passion for helping others. Throughout his life, Dad never hesitated to help others, and it became a powerful impression that he left on all of us. Sometimes we're asked by colleagues, how do we find the time to devote so much time to charitable work? And thanks to the way our parents raised us, we never thought of it as work. It was always a passion. I remember in 1963 when our parents left us to help in the relief effort after a devastating earthquake in Skopje, Macedonia. In our school years, it wasn't uncommon to come home and see a half a dozen guests around the kitchen table, whether it was designing a Canadian-Macedonian place, sending clothes or medical supplies overseas, creating charities like Pro Action Cops and Kids, building a wellness center for those with degenerative brain diseases, or planning the next trip to rally support for a free Macedonia. For my siblings and our children, actions like these were not considered out of the ordinary. Dedicating time and effort and helping others has always been the norm for us. And that's thanks to Dad and Mom and their passion. It was through this passion for others that Dad became not just our father, but our inspiration. He took those values and they forged us in the early years, and he carried them down to us. From him we learned perseverance, and we learned integrity. A good friend of mine likes to say, if you want to know what I'm thinking, look at what I'm doing. Well, with Dad, you never had to second guess what he meant. You only had to do, because you always knew what he was thinking. And to all of us here today, he taught us the value of dreaming big and having the courage to see those dreams come true. Dad climbed many mountains in his lifetime. I truly believe that today he's enjoying the view from the ultimate summit. We miss you, Dad. We love you, Dad. Pass the Numa.
Thank you, Tom, for those beautiful words and that great family. And Tom, along with his brothers Nick and John and Jordan, his sister Vonna, are not only great family people, but they also inherited their dad's love of business, and they became great business people. And to John Sr., business was family, family was business, and Tom said the words that he believed that all dreams could come true, and he was a big dreamer, and dreams do come true. Here's a look at the business side of John Bittoff.
You have to make a plan, you have to know what you're doing, and you just charge ahead, and people will follow if they see the right things happen. So everybody follows success.
I want to live, not merely survive, and I won't give up this dream of life that keeps me alive. I gotta be me. Makes me what I am, that faraway prize, a world of success is waiting for me if I heed the call. I won't settle down, won't settle for less, as long as there's a chance that I can have it all. I'll go it alone, that's how it must be. I can't be right for somebody else if I'm not right for me. I gotta be free. Try to do it or die, I've gotta be me.
Looking at the video and all those businesses and the restaurants and everything, I think every one of us in this room own a piece of one of the Bittoff properties. I think we spent a lot of money at a lot of those restaurants. My goodness. To speak now on his connection to John Bittoff and the business side as well, please welcome Senator Trevor Eaton.
Well, we heard just a little of John. He was special. It wasn't his many accomplishments and accolades that made him so, but more his sense of fun and his innate desire to meet every challenge, no matter what, a fierce competitor. In short, a great companion I was privileged to have had as a friend and as a colleague. These attributes made J.B. a leading entrepreneur in the food industry, where during the 70s he operated the restaurants that have been referred to, the chain of Big Boy and Roy Rogers. But he followed that in the 80s with larger projects where he obtained the catering rights to Toronto's Pearson Airport and to Toronto's Skydome, of course now Rogers Centre, including a most successful Hard Rock Cafe and a renowned Founders Club setting a world standard for high-end stadium restaurants. It was during this later phase I came to know and work with J.B., which came about when my late wife Jane had the good fortune to meet and become a close friend of Dots's during a trip to Europe. The two ladies decided, and much of our own decisions are prompted this way, but two ladies decided that J.B. and I should come to know each other and hopefully undertake some business together. That turned out to be by acting as part of a small band of dreamers who were committed to building a world-class stadium in downtown Toronto. That small band included Bob Foster, Paul Godfrey, Arden Haynes, Eddie Cogan, J.B. and me, who collectively came to represent the minority private piece of the Skydome venture, with the remaining majority piece owned and controlled by Queen's Park. The venture coalesced when Premier Davis extracted a promise from the small band that it should raise some $60 million of private funding, and the small band agreed to that so long as the Skydome was located in its present location, and that's how that happened to be. As it happened, the $60 million commitment from the private sector grew to some $150 million during the course of construction, contributed by some 29 corporate partners. This greater commitment might have deterred others, but not the small band, exhorted as we were by John Bidoff in particular and Eddie Cogan, who from the onset had the grand vision the Skydome would transform the southwest sector of downtown Toronto. That turned out to be correct, supplemented by the presence and success of our beloved Blue Jays and the myriad of happenings and investments in that sector that are today an integral part of Toronto's stellar reputation as one of the world's top cities. In all of this, J.B. was instrumental in his quiet way, but he was always there, always reliable, and always enthusiastic. J.B. and I were also keen golfers with assorted partners and our own forgiving set of rules that made us competitive, at least with each other. I believe there is a shot here. It was one golfing venture, and it's pictured over my shoulder, and it shows J.B. and me at Devil's Pulpit Golf Course, where J.B. is standing in front of a gap in the low stone wall approaching the 17th hole. The significance is that J.B. is wearing a hockey helmet and mask as a precaution, since 1 week earlier he had attempted to hit his ball through the gap onto the 17th hole. Unfortunately, his ball hit the stone wall and rebounded squarely into his 4 front teeth. Instantly, that created a second gap in the same locale. To this day, the gap is popularly referred to as the Bidoff Gap. Socially, our families partied frequently. For some years, we hosted an annual Christmas party centered on a chartered yacht located in Palm Beach that attracted people from all over Florida, coming to enjoy our Dixieland Jazz Band and our special guest, John Tory, the mayor's father, whose contribution each year was to tell a bad joke badly. He was utterly reliable until one year he told a good joke well. It was a severe disappointment to all, and J.B. and I had to cancel our annual Christmas party. We, however, carried on. The next year we went for a beach party at the Four Seasons in Palm Beach that carried on well past midnight, but not before J.B. mandated, and I say mandated, he commanded the singing of O Canada by all present or nearby of whatever nationality. There are a few of those, these are a few of the memories I have involving JB, and I'm reminded of others frequently as I go about this city and see the things that he's built and the things he's done. Things such as, and indirectly a connection that I believe in, and that is the stellar performance of the Blue Jays over the last few weeks indirectly came out of the Sky Dome and out of the efforts of John, JB, and others. I also reminded when I attended Gretzky's, which for years has been the first choice to celebrate Toronto and Canadian sporting moments. In fact, Gretzky's, as most of you will know, was another one of JB's visions. And today, I remember when our John McDermott, who we've heard already this evening, came to my office at the suggestion of Conrad Black, who it appeared had committed to providing $40,000 to John McDermott to fund his first CD. John needed $80,000, and Conrad readily volunteered half of that with the suggestion that JB, Pat Keenan, and I would be good for the remaining $40,000. It took a little discussion, but in fact we did that. Two observations from that investment. The first was it was the only entertainment investment I ever made where I enjoyed a return of any kind. And the second, that small gesture cemented lifelong friendships which have been a joy to us all for these years. What better way then of marking this friendship and the role of JB as one of our financiers by having John McDermott sing his immensely popular Danny Boy, the CD funded those many years ago. John, I welcome you to perform. I hope I'm on schedule here.
I'm right with you.
I've been honored to participate in this memorial service, and I thank you all, including especially the entire and very numerous Bidoff family.
I wouldn't be here today if they didn't invest. That's a fact. Oh, Johnny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and on the mountainside. The summer's gone and all of the roses falling. 'Tis you must go and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, when the valley's hushed and white with snow. 'Tis I'll be here in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Johnny boy, we love you so. And if you come and all of the flowers are dying, and I am dead as dead I well may be, you'll come and find the place where I am lying, and kneel and say an Ave there for me. And I shall hear the soft you tread above me, and on my grave will warmer, sweeter be. And ye shall bend and tell me that you love me. and I shall sleep in peace until you come to
If you really believe that you're doing good, you do it.
Give a little bit, oh, give a little bit of your love to me. I'll give a little bit, I'll give a little bit of my love to you. There's so much that we need to share, so send a smile and show you care. I'll give a little bit, I'll give a little bit of my life for you. So give a little bit, oh, give a little bit of your time.
The Beethoven Academy is a lifesaver for us. Nadia and I cried. We cried tears of happiness because we found the exact place that we wanted Fuad to be coming to.
I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Biddle family for everything they've done for the community here.
This is just God sent for us. And we're grateful to Mr. Bitov. God rest his soul in peace. And we're grateful to the family.
Thank you very much for everything that everybody's done.
John Bitove and his family did not give a little bit. They have given a whole lot to this community, to this great city of Toronto, from charity to centers in their name, to helping people, to paying it forward. You saw a picture of a young curly-haired guy named Paul Godfrey in there a little bit earlier. He's also a man who's been a great leader in this city, and he's our next speaker today.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a great honor for me to be here to salute a great Canadian icon, John Bitove. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a very beautiful poem by Linda Ellis called The Dash. It begins, I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone, from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. The poem goes on to say, for it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we lived and loved and how we spend our dash. John Bitove Sr. spent his dash generously and open-heartedly and graciously. Put a dash between any two things John was involved in, and you could go on and on and on. From loving family man to proud Macedonian, from youth supporter to education proponent, from philanthropist to community leader. John loved his family, his heritage, and his city. And it is through this love of our city that we forged our enduring friendship. I learned many things from this incredible man. He was dedicated to doing great work for so many causes, and he took little to no credit and always thanked those, as he put it, that did the heavy lifting. I've known John since my earliest days in politics.
probably since the mid-60s. He gave us sound advice and wise counsel on many of my political campaigns and to many civic and government leaders as well. He was known for providing good guidance and had tremendous credibility. I watched him in his quiet way coordinate and help engineer the rise of Brian Mulroney not only to the leadership of the Progressive Conservative Party, but to the Prime Minister's position as well. He was a great Samaritan, a community leader, a benefactor, and he left his mark on this city in the most profound way possible by making it a better place to live and, of course, to play. In 1979, while I was Metro Chairman, I was so proud to name John Bidoff Sr. Honorary Citizen of Metropolitan Toronto, which was one of many honors bestowed upon him in his lifetime, including being invested as well as a member of the Order of Canada in 1989. In 1992, he was the recipient of the commemorative medal for the 125th anniversary of the Canadian Confederation. In 2012, he received the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal for his contribution to Canada. And in fact, 10 years earlier, he received the Golden Jubilee Medal as well from the Queen. He was also named Honorary Chief of Police in recognition of the founding of Pro-Action Cops and Kids. He realized more than anyone that our city would benefit if youth at risk and the police could forge better relationships with each other. Since 1991, Pro-Action has funded Toronto Police programs for youth and has expanded to include chapters in Durham, Hamilton, and Niagara. As a family man, John was a role model. I always thought that Dotsa and he were the model parents of a model family. I watched with great interest how his 5 children adored and respected their parents, and how well they all got along with each other. I told him on numerous occasions, when my own kids were quite young, that I would be happy if my sons had the same level of respect for Gina and me as their children had for them. He emphasized education to all of his children and his grandchildren. And like with everything that John believed strongly in, he supported his beliefs with action. He established the Bidoff Foundation Scholarship Award at Ryerson University School of Hospitality, a degree program at the University of Toronto for the study of the Macedonian language. Has been said by Tom, the John and Dotsa Bidoff Law Library at the University of Western Ontario was named in their honor, and he founded a scholarship program for the United Macedonian Diaspora for outstanding students of Macedonian heritage. John served as a director on the boards of the Royal Ontario Museum, was Ontario chairman for the British Commonwealth Games of 1986, and co-chair of the G7 conference of 1988, which took place right here in Toronto. And guess what? There were no riots in the streets at that time. He was a member of the Canadian Society for the Weitzman Institute and founder of the Armour Heights Rotary Club. John gave, John helped, and John cared. There are people who are fortunate enough to be able to give generously financially, and he was indeed a great leading philanthropist. But he also rolled up his sleeves and got the job done when it needed. From the early days when in 1963, he and his beloved wife Dotsa traveled overseas for 6 weeks to personally help relief efforts and gather supplies for those injured in the devastating earthquake in Skopje, Macedonia. And he worked hard to get more people involved when he chaired fundraising activities for the Toronto General Hospital's Cardiac Care Unit. If there was a cause, John was there. If there was a mountain to climb, John climbed that to the top and took people with him. 2 efforts that were particularly near and dear to John's heart were the founding of the Canadian Macedonian Place and the conceiving, funding, and building of the Dotsa Bidoff Wellness Academy. John's passion for his heritage endures, And for nearly 4 decades, the Canadian Macedonian Place has continued to provide exceptional services to elderly Macedonian Torontonians. And a labor of love for the love of his life, the Dots Bidoff Wellness Academy for persons living with memory loss, their families, and care partners is a first in Canada, providing engaging programming for participants with memory loss and activities for their family. He built bridges between people of different backgrounds. He built bridges between cities, between causes, between countries. He wasn't just a great man, but a one-of-a-kind man, and put much, much more back into his community than he ever took out. The poem I mentioned earlier ends with the following. So when your eulogy is being read, with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? We can certainly all agree today that John Bidoff Sr. has a lot to be proud of. His legacy will live forever through his many good works, the causes he supported, and what would be John's proudest legacy, his beautiful family. We are all so much better because of him. We should all take some inspiration from a life very well lived as we continue to live our dash.
The first time I heard of Mr. Bidoff was when I was about 15. He came to visit Macedonia to help President Gligorov with making Macedonia an independent country. These were uncertain and scary times for Macedonia. What I will forever remember is that he made me feel safer and gave me hope that everything will be alright. The fact that we had someone as capable as him made me believe there will be no war. The country will become independent and successful, and he delivered.
If a man is born in Canada, he is a Canadian. Even if a lady happens to be here for a few moments and borns a child, that child becomes a Canadian. And so whoever was born in Macedonia from the last many, many centuries was Macedonian.
I want to express my deepest condolences to the whole Bidoff family. And as the chairman of Macedonia 2025, say a few words about our beloved John Bidoff Sr. Many people don't know that it was John who was the founder and father of our organization. John's life mission was to unite all Macedonians around the planet, as well as to teach giving without asking anything in return. We were all blessed by his presence. He was a father, friend, mentor, and an inspiration to all of us. I also believe he was the greatest Macedonian ever. John, we miss you. I miss you. But I want to assure you that we will continue to carry your life mission brightly into the future. Thank you.
If anyone wanted to go under the democratic principles, let them go there and ask those 2.5 million people what they are. And you will find that 99% of them will say we are Macedonians and be proud to say it.
I'm so excited and proud to be part of John's celebration, to celebrate John's life. And what a life you live, John. Fully, well, and with gusto. You're a friend, a mentor, and a role model for all the things that really matter in life. Family, friends, giving back, and of course, never forgetting where you came from. You're a true global citizen, a great Canadian, and of course, a great Macedonian patriot. John Big Eye, we miss you, we love you, and we're gonna work very hard to keep making you proud of us. Ще се видиме. Много поздрав. Те сакам.
You know, some people save money, some people save stamps or hockey cards. John Bitov saved lives. He saved a country. Macedonia wouldn't exist today, and that's not hyperbole, if it wasn't for John Bitov. To speak more about his contributions and his continuing philosophy to pay it forward, please welcome Chris Pellier.
JB was someone who did nothing in half measures. He was a larger-than-life personality. He was someone who, as you've heard, dreamed big. But inevitably, he would turn those dreams into reality, often against great odds, by sheer force of his personality and his belief that in attaining his goal was essential. When others saw obstacles, John saw opportunities. Nowhere was that ability to turn dreams into reality more evident than in JB's passion for all things Macedonian. Yes, John was proud of being a Canadian. He loved everything about Canada, particularly the opportunities it gave him and his family. He was born in Toronto in the 1920s to immigrant parents, Dedo Kolo and Baba Vana, but he was also fiercely proud of his Macedonian heritage, a heritage that defined him to the core. He wore his pride of Macedonia on his sleeve at all times, and it was deep in his heart. He wanted Canadians to know, understand, and embrace the Macedonian culture that he loved. He wanted his non-Macedonian friends to love that culture as much as he did. The list of JB's contributions to the Macedonian community are too numerous to list in the time allotted to me to talk about my friend, mentor, and surrogate father, JB. My journey with John started as a youth. We lived on a street called Caroline Avenue in what is now gentrified Leslieville. At the end of our street was Dedo Kolo's butcher shop on Queen Street where John worked. My mother and I often went there to shop. Our lives crisscrossed over the next 25 years. But it was not until 1978 that I had my first major involvement with John. Now, I realize in retrospect that all of my involvement with JB began with him calling and saying, "Let's have lunch." He told me on that occasion that he was planning on building a senior citizens home for the elderly Macedonians who needed a place to grow old in their own culture, eating their own food, and associating together as they would have in the village before they emigrated to Canada. John was not doing this for his own parents, as they had already passed away. Rather, typically of JB, it was for the benefit of our community. But talk about dreaming big. This was the kind of project that had never been undertaken by a Macedonian community anywhere in the diaspora, ever. John's vision was not only to build the home for the benefit of our seniors in their retirement years, but also to unite the various factions of the Macedonian community, of which there were many, in order to get them to work together in a united way to complete this project. And of course, he achieved both dreams. John purchased the land and put his money and energy into this project. John oversaw every aspect of the building, from approvals to construction to budgeting to selection of the interior. Canadian Macedonian Place is more vibrant than ever, 35 years after John Biddulph conceived of the idea. Now, the next Let's Have Lunch meeting was in 1984, when John got the idea that non-Macedonians needed to know about Macedonia and Macedonian culture. He asked me to meet with him and bring along John Evans, a Canadian actor and director who was also of Macedonian ethnicity. This dream was to put on display art, music, and plays dealing with Macedonia. I thought this was a great idea and assumed we would do it in a Macedonian church hall. Not John. His dream was to do this at Roy Thompson Hall. But John, how are we going to fill Roy Thompson Hall? And who's going to come? JB was determined that we would fill Roy Thompson Hall, and it was going to be done first class, and yet again, he was right. The lieutenant governor came, Pauline McGibbon. Senators came. Politicians came. And mostly non-Macedonians. And you know what? It was an enormous success. The next Let's Have Lunch meeting dealt with John's dream to try to eradicate the violation of the human rights of Macedonians in that portion of Macedonia currently occupied by Greece. It's a place where Macedonians are not permitted to speak their own language, dance their own dances, enjoy freedom of religion in the Macedonian Orthodox Church, nor freedom of association, nor are they able to assert anything about their Macedonian ethnicity. And as Tom told you, he was absolutely against any kind of discrimination. I can tell you this failure of our people to be able to enjoy those basic human rights in Greece grated on John throughout his lifetime. So John, at this lunch, asked me to go to a human rights conference in Moscow, where all members of the EU nations would be present in order that we could bring voice to their problems and tell the European community about these human rights violations of our people. Off I went. That was 1991. Then he got me to go to Helsinki in 93 and Warsaw in 96 on similar missions as the human rights abuses in Greece continued. Through John's efforts, the situation in Greece today is much better for the human rights of our people than it was when he embarked upon that dream. The next Let's Have Lunch meeting involved a relief fund for Macedonia the year after it got its independence in 1991. Macedonia was desperate for drugs and vaccinations. It was being frozen out by the Greek community of Greece. John initiated and spearheaded a movement in 1992 to obtain drugs and vaccines valued at $3 million to be sent to Macedonia. This was done with the help of Stan Thomas, Dr. Chris Stefanovic, and others in the Macedonian community here. It was followed up, that success wasn't enough, by a similar fundraising event in '99 dealing with the Kosovo refugees in Macedonia, where $4 million of medicine was shipped to Skopje. All of these dreams were undertaken by John and success obtained in each of them. But all of those paled in comparison, though, to what happened in 1991 when the Republic of Macedonia became an independent nation with the breakup of the former Yugoslavia. John relished the opportunity to get Macedonia recognized as an independent nation by other countries and to assist in getting Macedonia admitted to the United Nations. You have to remember that this was a dream that we all had about an independent Macedonia that we never thought would happen. John jumped on it. He dove into this challenge. He wanted to hire the best PR firm to assist him. So he hired Hill and Knowlton. He also hired the late Ken Taylor, the former Canadian ambassador to Iran, who was hailed as a hero in the United States for his role in protecting and saving the lives of a number of members of the U.S. State Department, because he thought Ken Taylor could assist him with respect to getting the United States on board. This project was initially funded by John. It involved numerous trips to the United States and to Skopje to meet with the new government in Macedonia. It ultimately resulted in Macedonia becoming the 181st nation to be accepted in the United Nations in 1993. And today, over 125 countries recognize the Republic of Macedonia under its constitutional name, and a large part of that was because of the way in which John initiated this project from the beginning. Then, once the Republic of Macedonia was up and running, JB initiated the idea that the Macedonian diaspora needed to have an organization of professionals that are going to assist with the economic development of Macedonia. This resulted in the founding of Macedonia 2025 with his son John, Mike Zafirovsky, and other notable members of the diaspora. There are many other initiatives I could tell you about that were created by John, but let me conclude by saying that in his efforts with respect to Macedonian issues, he received the September 8 Medal of Honor from the President of the Republic of Macedonia. That's a medal that is the highest honor given by Macedonia, and it was for his lifelong dedication to the support of Macedonia. No one did more for Macedonia than John Biddulph. He was an inspiration for Macedonians around the world. He never asked anyone to do more than he was prepared to do himself. For me, he ignited the desire to assist Macedonians, and all I can say is that I am better for having had John as my friend and mentor. I'm thrilled to have had the opportunity to say a few words at this celebration of life of a truly great Canadian and an equally great Macedonian, and I am particularly thrilled to be like a member of the Biddulph family, having known them for my entire life. They are an amazing group. He is an amazing individual, and I thank you for this opportunity, the Biddulph family.
Thank you, Chris. The only thing that John Biddulph loved more than Macedonia or Canada or Toronto or his restaurants, of course, his family, his wife Dotsa and his kids and his grandkids. He always wanted to start a dream team. Well, he did. So we're going to bring the grandkids up. Here they are.
There are places I remember all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better. Some have gone, and some remain. All these places.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Biddulph grandkids.
Good afternoon. My name is Blair, and I'm the daughter of Randy and John Jr. You see, for 12 years, I was the baby of this family, and that meant, as the baby, I got to call the shots. My grandfather, who most of you know as JB, we all called Dedo. Dedo was everywhere in our lives, at concerts, plays, games, the cottage, Florida. He was such a great grandparent because he was so encouraging about everything we did And even if we weren't the best at the event, he sure made us feel like we were. He was so proud of us no matter what the outcome, and we all knew that. My dad would always say, education is the key to success, which was funny to hear coming from someone who dropped out of high school. He would say that if there was one thing he wished he could have done over, it would have been to stay in school. Even though things seemed to work out okay for him, he still insisted that we all finish our education. And you know what? I'm proud to say that everyone on this stage, except for my little cousins, of course, have done so. Most of our earliest childhood memories begin at the cottage, the amazing place my grandparents built in Collingwood that we all knew was really created for us. My dad knew how to spoil us at such a young age. The cottage was a place that brought all of our families together, and through those times, we were able to grow into the people we are today. He wanted us to learn the meaning of family, and we definitely did, from all the summers, winter weekends, and Christmases we spent up there together. It is because of him and his family values that kept us so close-knit and made each of us feel not as just close cousins, but more like siblings, a giant family, and for that, Dedo, we thank you. There are many great stories we all have of our Dedo, and I wanted to share one of mine with you. As many of you know, he used to smoke many packs of cigarettes. My Baba would always try to get him to quit, and he did try, sort of. Once when we were in Florida, I secretly followed him outside the house to his hiding place where he would go sneak a cigarette. I was maybe 5 years old at the time, and I jumped out from the bushes and yelled, "Caught you!" After being startled, he laughed and begged me not to tell anyone. He said, "Let's make a deal. I'll give you a new doll if you promise not to tell anyone." We shook hands, and from there I learned the art of a deal. He would always joke with me about how I was my dad's payback for how he was with my Dedo as a child. Difficult, stubborn, but just the right amount that could convince anyone to get his way. Dedo could never say no to him because my dad would just find another way around it. A similar trait that seems to maybe have been passed down. This ceremony is all about Dedo, his life and accomplishments, and it is important to mention one of his greatest ones, his children. We grandchildren truly have the best aunts and uncles. Fauna, Nick and Della, Tom and Karen, Jordan and Nicole, and my parents, John and Randy. They are just as supportive to each of us as they are to their own children. Each cousin definitely has a few stories about how each of you have been like a parent to us. I know how proud my Dedo is of all of you and all that you have done in life. Sometimes Dedo wouldn't have the words to say it because he wanted to push you to do better. I know he's proud looking down and seeing how you've all managed to keep this family so close. As cliche as it sounds, it's actually true. Not a day goes by where I'm not reminded of my Dedo. And I know the rest of my family feels the same way. He always told us to be optimistic, to work hard, and to give back to the communities we live in. There's no such expression as "I can't do it" with Dedo. Dedo, you made this family what it is, a big group of friends that are loving, supportive, and there for each other, no matter what happens in life. The fact that we are here today in front of this large gathering of all of his friends is a testament to his character. Tomorrow would be my grandparents' 66th wedding anniversary, and we all know that Dedo would have never achieved what he did in life without the love of his life and the rock of our family, Baba. Baba, we know how close you and Dedo were, and what you both did to instill in us the meaning of love, commitment, education, and honesty. Not to mention organization. Because with Baba, you can never have a dirty room or look disheveled, as she would say. I'll fix you in your little wagon. I admire my Dedo so much and hope I can follow in his footsteps. He didn't make it easy. 22 years with my Dedo was definitely not enough, but I know he'll always be watching over us. From all the grandchildren, we thank you, we love you, and we'll keep living the life as you have guided us. As my Dedo said, Persunauma means keep your finger on the brain, and so you'll always be thinking of your actions. Dedo, we promise you, Persunauma, we love you.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for coming today to That's my little cousin, Cammie. to celebrate the life and show your love and respect for a man who myself and the rest of his 15 grandchildren up here were so lucky to be able to call our Dedo. As you know, charming and kind and giving a man he was, most of us here know he wasn't the most musically talented person in the world. But that didn't stop him from singing every day. He loved to sing, especially with the love of his life over there, our grandmother, Baba. And so I just wanted to say that music is so powerful. It's the universal language. It sticks with us for life. 2 songs in particular have stuck with me till this day, and me and my little cousin here are gonna sing it for you. And Dedo, I know you're up there. You're gonna be listening, so I hope we don't mess this up. See trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day or the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, while also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. Somewhere over the rainbow, blue birds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh, why can't I? Birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh, why can't I?
Thank you.
Wow. Holy smoke. JB is loving that. I thought the Partridge Family was good. Wow, the Bitto family's even better. So, quite a day, quite a celebration. I know it's a time, the last little while, to mourn the loss of someone great. But today was a celebration. And I see so many police officers, our ultimate heroes here, who John Bitove, who I actually got a chance to see John in action and with Tom and the family, because they started a great organization called Pro Action, which helps high-risk youth in the streets. And I know former Chief Bill Blair is and was a big part of that, and I see the officers, so I want to thank the officers for what they do. We're handing out a few glow sticks here. It's going to take a little bit. This is where I tell a really bad joke. No, I'm not going to tell a joke. But I will tell you that the Pro Action, the community work, the friends, the people, the family, we heard from so many great speakers today. I'd like to thank all of them for sharing their wisdom and their friendship with the Bitto family. Has everybody got their glow sticks? We will have a reception in the foyer in just a few moments, but imagine a world that we all live in where someone like this man who was, I think the word has been used a lot, dreamer, and I think we all have to be dreamers, but imagine a man who was more a believer than a dreamer. He believed in it, and it all came true. They say that, you know, it's not the years in your life, but the life in your years. John Bitove was 87. He was 587. He got a lot of life in those years. We're going to miss him. He's with us and will always be with us. He's touched this city, this country, Macedonia, and he's touched all of you here. So thank you for coming. We have a reception a little bit later on, right after this. And we have the Regent Park Children's Choir. The Bitto family was a big benefactor to helping out that choir as well. And they talked about John's, JB's, Detto's favorite song. This might be the ultimate song. Thanks for coming, everybody.